My name is Dr. Elena Rivera, a diagnostic radiologist. For the past 17 years, I've spent my days reading scans and deciphering shadows that tell hidden stories inside people's bodies. Last Saturday, I found myself stepping into my sister's backyard in Mobile, Alabama for her gender reveal party. From the moment I walked through the gate, Cassie spotted me. She was glowing in a flowing white sundress stretched snug over her belly, practically skipping toward me with a glossy 4D ultrasound printout in hand. "Look, Elena," she gushed, eyes sparkling, "our little princess is perfect, right?" She pressed the photo under my nose. My heart sank the instant I glanced at it. I'd seen this before. The shadows were off, the contours smudged in ways that screamed Photoshop, recycled stock overlays masquerading as a real fetus. I recognized the lazy blending on the nose and chin from my moonlighting days at boutique ultrasound studios. My stomach twisted painfully. I forced a smile, returned the picture, and grabbed my sister's husband's wrist before he could saunter away with another beer. We ducked into the laundry room. At first, he laughed, thinking I was exaggerating. But when he caught the serious set of my eyes, the laughter died. I closed the door behind us and lowered my voice. "That's not a baby in the photo," I said flatly. His body stiffened. "What are you talking about?" he whispered, voice tight. "I'm telling you right now, whatever she's carrying, it's not a princess. It's not even a pregnancy." Outside, the countdown to the balloon pop had started, 50 voices chanting, 10, 9, 8. I looked him dead in the eye. "We have minutes before that balloon explodes and changes everything." He rubbed his beer can like it could erase my words. "Here we go again," he muttered. "Elena the perfectionist strikes. Cassie's finally happy, and you can't stand it." I opened my mouth to respond, but the sliding glass door burst open behind us. Mom stormed in, her pink sash declaring teen girl across her chest, cheeks flushed from champagne and anticipation. "What's going on in here?" she demanded. People were looking for me, the aunt-to-be who had vanished. My sister's husband rolled his eyes. "She's doing her thing. Mom says the ultrasound is fake or something." Mom gasped, clutching her chest. "Fake? That little girl has my nose. I've been staring at her every night in my dreams." Dad appeared a moment later, balancing plates of cupcakes, giving me the same disappointed glance he once gave me for bringing home a live B in 8th grade. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "you work too hard. You see problems where there aren't any." I tried to explain, "The shadows are inconsistent, the facial proportions match stock overlays I've flagged before, this isn't a real fetal face." Mom waved me off. Cassie said the technician spent 45 minutes getting the perfect shot. She picked the music for the video. My sister's husband took a long pull of his beer. "You're embarrassing yourself, Elena. You're upsetting Cassie." Through the glass, I saw Cassie radiant on the patio, laughing with friends, one hand cradling her belly. She looked every bit like the hopeful mother I'd delivered news to countless times. But today, the truth I carried was like a shadow looming behind her. I swallowed my words. 50 people, a giant black balloon, confetti, there was no way to reach them now. "Fine," I muttered quietly. "Let's go back out there." They led the way, Mom looping her arm through her son-in-law's. "Your wife needs you for pictures," she said. Dad lingered, putting a hand on my shoulder. "We love you, kiddo. But today is about family." I followed them into the sunlight. The DJ had resumed the upbeat pop song, and Cassie waved, sparkling. "Everything okay?" she asked. I squeezed her hand. "Perfect," I lied. She pulled me into the group photo, cameras flashing, Mom already wiping tears. Knox stood behind her, arms wrapped around her, chin resting on her shoulder. Across the circle, he caught my eye and shook his head ever so slightly, the same signal we used as kids when one of us got into trouble. I understood. The countdown resumed. 10, 9, 8. My phone raised, recording, heart hammering. 7, 6, 5. Mom crying openly now, holding Dad's arm, 4, 3, 2. I closed my eyes for half a second, silently praying I was wrong. 1. Pink confetti exploded, sticking to sweaty arms, landing in champagne glasses. Screams of joy ricocheted off the fence. Cassie spun, hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming. Her husband lifted her, their laughter mingling with cries of happiness. Mom enveloped them in a hug so tight. It seemed endless. Dad filmed, wiping eyes. The backyard had transformed into pure celebration. And there I was, frozen in the middle, phone recording on autopilot. The party carried on around me. Cake was cut, gifts were opened, tiny pink onesies passed from hand to hand. Cassie's husband never left her side, his arm always around her, grinning like he couldn't believe his luck. I carried a stack of paper plates toward the kitchen, but a quiet voice stopped me. Hey. I don't feel so great. Cassie was leaning against the patio table, hand low on her abdomen. She tried to laugh it off, but her face had gone pale, and the way she shifted weight betrayed the exact discomfort I'd seen on countless patients. I set the plates down immediately. Spring Hill Hospital is literally 10 minutes away. Let me drive you, just to be safe, I said. Her husband hesitated, glancing at the half-cleaned yard. Mom waved him off immediately. Go take care of my girls, she said, soft and knowing, like the universe had finally delivered her order. Cassie nodded weakly. He grabbed her purse and the diaper bag someone had gifted them. Dad clapped him on the back. Call us the second you know anything. We drove in silence. The remnants of pink confetti clung to our clothes. Her husband rubbed circles on her shoulder, muttering, "It's probably nothing, maybe indigestion." Cassie rested her head against the window. I just want her to be okay, she said quietly. By the time we reached the ER, it was quiet for a Saturday night. I badge swiped us through the staff entrance, bypassing triage. The charge nurse, Carla, took one look at us and waved us straight into an ultrasound room. Cassie lifted her dress without a word, and her husband held her hand so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Carla applied the gel and placed the probe low on her abdomen. The screen filled with the familiar whoosh of the machine, the sound I'd memorized over thousands of scans. And there it was. A large, complex mass dominating the left ovary. Cystic and solid areas, thick septations, no gestational sac, no fetal pull, no heartbeat. Carla's eyes flicked to mine. She knew exactly what I was seeing. Cassie stared at the ceiling, waiting for the image to transform into a baby that would never appear. Her husband leaned closer, eyes scanning the screen like willing it into existence. There is no daughter, I said softly but clearly. Cassie turned slowly toward the screen, her expression catching somewhere between disbelief and dread. Her husband's voice cracked. Wait, what? There has to be a mistake. She's 22 weeks. We saw the heartbeat. We have videos. I explained gently. Keepsake ultrasound boutiques are not regulated like hospitals in Alabama. They can enhance images or even insert stock footage. Some are worse, they fabricate entire pregnancies. Cassie's hand dropped slowly from her belly. Her color had vanished. How could they do this? She whispered, voice trembling. Her husband's gaze snapped to me, a mix of confusion, betrayal, and panic. Elena, tell me this is a joke. Before I could answer, another radiologist, Dr. Marisol Vega, entered the room. Her hair was pulled back in the same messy bun she'd worn since residency. She glanced at me, understanding everything in a silent exchange. I can take it from here, she said. I shook my head. I'll stay. This is family. She rolled the stool closer and ran a high-resolution scan. The mass filled the left ovary, 15 centimeters, multiloculated with mixed solid and cystic components. Doppler showed vascular flow, classic complex ovarian mass. No intrauterine pregnancy, no yolk sac, nothing. Cassie stared at the swirling gray and black patterns, lips parted, no sound escaping. Her husband finally found his voice. There has to be a mistake, we paid extra for the 4D package. We even got the heartbeat video. I spoke for the first time since we entered. That heartbeat was likely a recording looped for every client. Tears slid down Cassie's cheeks. Why would they do this to me, she whispered, broken and quiet. Her husband's hands shook as he held hers. It's not a joke, Marisol said gently. We need to admit her tonight. Gynecology-oncology is on call. The mass is large enough that surgical removal will likely be needed tomorrow morning. Cassie's breathing sped up. Marisol continued, trying to soften the blow. The good news is, these masses are often benign, dermoid cysts, endometriomas, or cystinomas. We won't know for sure until pathology, but most women your age are not facing malignancy. Cassie let out a sound that was neither laugh nor sob. Benign, she had carried a 15-centimeter non-cancerous mass instead of a daughter. Her husband looked as though he'd been punched in the chest, mouth opening and closing, struggling for words. I stayed at the doorway, arms crossed, every second weighted with truth. Marisol printed still images for Cassie to see. Her fingers trembled as she took them, staring until they dropped to the floor. Her husband's eyes met mine. He didn't speak, but the unspoken question hung in the air. You knew all along? Back at the house, he asked it plainly. I didn't answer. Some truths sound cruel no matter what. Marisol went to retrieve consent forms and page the surgical team. Elena, maybe step outside with me for a minute. I followed her into the hallway. She leaned against the wall. I'm sorry, she murmured. That was brutal. Yeah, I whispered. It's only going to get worse. Back in the room, her husband pulled a chair close. Cassie curled on her side, shoulders shaking. He rubbed her back in slow circles, whispering things I couldn't hear. I lingered at the doorway before walking down the corridor, confetti still clinging to my shoes. The recovery room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. Surgery went smoothly. Marisol removed the left ovary and tube laparoscopic through tiny incisions, hidden beneath small pink bandages. Pathology confirmed a benign mature cystic teratoma, hair, fat, all components present. No malignancy. Fertility preserved on paper. Once the surgery was over, I waited for the nurse's thumbs up before walking into the room, carrying the weakest bouquet I could find in the hospital gift shop. Cassie's eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling tiles. She didn't turn when my shoes squeaked against the linoleum. Hey, I said softly. Surgery went perfectly. You're going to be fine. She gave a tiny nod, barely acknowledging me. Her husband sat on the stool beside her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his skin had gone white. He offered me a tired half-smile that didn't reach his eyes before returning his focus to her. I set the flowers on the rolling table, and Cassie gave another slight nod. The room was quiet, stretched taut with unspoken grief and relief. Just as I was about to speak again, the door opened. Her mother stepped in, wearing the same pink cardigan from the party, now wrinkled and faintly smelling of barbecue smoke. She paused at the threshold, then stepped around me as if I were furniture. Leaning over her daughter, she murmured softly, words that made Cassie's chin tremble. I listened from the other side of the curtain. There were no thanks, no acknowledgement of what I had done. Only quiet reassurance to her daughter, telling her she was still young, that real babies would come when the time was right, and that God had a plan. My phone buzzed. A message from her husband, * wife needs rest. Give her space today. Thanks for everything. * no anger, no accusation, just a period at the end of a sentence that felt like a locked door. I walked out into the surgical hallway, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Nurses bustled past with charts and 4 poles. I found an empty family waiting area, sank into a vinyl chair, and stared at the muted TV. 20 minutes later, Dad arrived carrying 2 coffees, handing me one without asking how I took it. Black, same as his. We sat side by side in silence. She's awake, I said eventually. He nodded. Your mother's with her. Silence again. He rubbed the back of his neck. People process differently, Lenora. She's never done this before, not once in 38 years. Sloane lost a baby today she thought she had for 5 months. That's how she sees it, no matter what the scans say. I swallowed hard, knowing he was right. I hadn't taken that from her, the boutique had. He set his cup down, and we let the quiet stretch until the coffee went cold. That night, I slept in the on-call room. Going home felt pointless. My phone stayed dark, except for occasional updates from the nurse, pain managed, tolerating ice chips, sleeping. The next morning, I tried again. I walked to her room carrying a real breakfast sandwich instead of vending machine junk. Her mother was already there, fluffing pillows, helping Cassie sit up, just like she had done for me as a child when I was sick. When her mother saw me in the doorway, she paused but continued without acknowledgement. Cassie looked past her, eyes red-rimmed, giving me the weakest smile I had ever seen. "Hey," she croaked. "Hey," I replied, holding up the sandwich. "Thought you might want something that isn't hospital eggs." Her mother murmured, "Thanks," and set the bag on the tray, untouched. Her husband came in behind me, carrying a duffel of fresh clothes. He kissed her temple, then turned politely to me. "Morning," he said, neutral, as though I were a coworker he barely knew. I lasted 30 seconds of small talk about discharge paperwork before excusing myself. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. For the first time, I felt a real crack run through everything I thought family meant. By the time she went home 3 days later, I had become the visitor who waited in the corridor, the one nobody quite knew where to seat. My apartment had transformed into a war room, printouts covering the dining table, color-coded sticky notes on every wall, 3 monitors glowing in the dark, takeout boxes forming a leaning tower beside the couch. It began with a Facebook group, Mobile Moms-to-Be, 23,000 members strong. Mostly harmless posts about nurseries and strollers, but I searched for Sweet Angel and the screen filled with horror stories. One woman wrote about being told her twin boys were a girl, she had already painted the nursery lavender. Another posted side-by-side images of the boutique's glossy 4D prints versus her hospital scan 2 days later, anatomy completely different. A third shared a GoFundMe about an ectopic pregnancy missed at 20 weeks. I screenshotted everything, saved the original files with timestamps, and began messaging women privately. Within 48 hours, 32 were willing to talk. By the end of the week, 51. I drove to Pensacola one Saturday to meet Ashley, 29, a former Sweet Angel client. We sat in a coffee shop while she pushed ultrasound prints across the table. Same recycled face, same smudged nose, same overlay I had seen on Cassie's photo. She had miscarried at 19 weeks after the boutique assured her everything looked perfect. She cried quietly into her latte. I promised her this wouldn't happen to anyone else. Back home, I built a timeline. Melanie Parsons opened Sweet Angel in 2019. First complaint filed with the Alabama Department of Public Health in 2020. Nothing happened. Keepsake boutiques operate in a gray zone, they're not medical facilities, no requirement for licensed sonographers or physician oversight. Yet they diagnose every day in pastel rooms, fake diplomas on the walls. I cold-called Daniel Pierce, a mobile attorney who had sued a similar studio in Mississippi. Third ring, he picked up. "Send me what you have," he said, voice calm, no sales pitch. That night, I emailed a 180-page PDF. 2 days later, he called back. "We're filing a mass action. I already have 12 plaintiffs ready to sign. The state health department is very interested." The following week, I met Melissa Chen from the Alabama Department of Public Health in a windowless conference room downtown. She spread my binder across the table like evidence in a murder trial. "This is the most comprehensive packet I've ever received from a private citizen," she said, flipping through highlighted statutes. "We can open an immediate investigation for practicing medicine without a license, fraud, deceptive trade practices. Would you submit an official affidavit?" I said yes before she finished the sentence. That night, I sat on my balcony staring at the port lights across the bay. My phone stayed dark, no messages from Cassie, no check-ins from her husband. Dad tried once a week after discharge, asking if I wanted to come for Sunday dinner. I said I was on call. Truth was, I wasn't. I kept working. More women came forward. A local news station ran a teaser after someone leaked a few stories. Melanie Parsons posted a tearful Facebook Live claiming harassment, saying jealous doctors were trying to ruin a small business. Comments were brutal on both sides. Daniel sent discovery demands. Subpoenas flew. Former employees messaged me anonymously. One admitted they were instructed to make the client happy no matter what the screen showed. Another sent a folder of raw files, dozens of families given the exact same smiling baby overlay, rotated 90 degrees. I printed everything, organized it into numbered tabs, and delivered banker boxes to Daniel's office myself. One Thursday, he called. The health department had issued an emergency cease and desist. They were raiding the studio Monday morning. They want you there when they serve the order, he said. I sank onto my kitchen floor and cried for the first time since the recovery room curtain closed, not because we'd won, but because nobody in my family would ever care. Monday morning arrived with the Gulf sun bouncing off the strip mall windows. I parked across the street from Sweet Angel 3D Studio at 7:45 a.m., hands tied on the wheel. 3 unmarked white vans pulled in at 8 o'clock sharp. Melissa Chen stepped out first, folder in hand, followed by 2 mobile PD officers and 4 state inspectors. A small crowd of former clients had already gathered on the sidewalk. Someone had created an event page. I stayed in my car. Melissa knocked once, loud and official. Melanie Parsons opened the door in her pink smock, mascara already running when she saw the badges. Melissa read the cease and desist aloud for every phone to record. Melanie tried to close the door, an officer blocked her. Within 30 seconds, they were inside. I finally crossed the street. The boutique looked smaller in daylight. Pastel walls, glittery lettering, a giant framed photo of a smiling infant that wasn't real. The plush white sofa still held the indentation where Cassie had sat the day they handed her the fake heartbeat bear. Officers moved fast, sealing computers, boxing hard drives, photographing fake diplomas. Melanie stood in the middle of it, mascara running, shouting about persecution of female entrepreneurs. Melissa calmly handed her the criminal warrant. Cuffs came out. Click, click. Someone in the crowd started clapping. The applause spread until the patrol car pulled away. 5 months later, I sat in the witness box at the Mobile County Courthouse, right hand raised, swearing to tell the truth. The courtroom smelled of old wood and tension. Daniel Pierce guided me through every screenshot, every recycled overlay, every missed ectopic, every falsified heartbeat recording. I answered in calm, flat medical language while Melanie stared straight ahead, lips bloodless. The prosecutor called 47 plaintiffs, 39 showed up. Cassie and her husband were subpoenaed twice but filed motions to quash, citing emotional distress and privacy concerns. The judge granted it, their names never appeared on the witness list. Closing arguments lasted one afternoon. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: practicing medicine without a license, wire fraud, mail fraud, deceptive trade practices, theft by deception. The judge sentenced Melanie to 5 years in Tutwiler prison for women and ordered restitution totaling $847,000 split among the victims. She cried when the gavel fell. I didn't. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps afterward. I slipped out the side exit, sunglasses on, and drove straight home. That night, I poured a glass of wine and opened my phone for the first time in days. A local news alert popped up, * Sweet Angel owner sentenced, victims vindicated. * hundreds of comments called me a hero, hearts and crying emojis flooding in. My family chat remained silent. No congratulations. No acknowledgement. Nothing. I set the phone face down and watched the port lights blink across the bay until the glass was empty. Justice had been served loud, public, and final, but the people whose opinion mattered most to me had chosen the side that lost. The holiday card never arrived that year. No posed photo of Cassie and her husband in matching sweaters. No baby girl Quinn letter pressed on thick cardstock. My mailbox stayed empty except for bills and ads. I heard the rest in fragments. Cassie quit her teaching job in February. Neighbors noticed the curtains drawn at noon, lights off by 7. Her husband took extra shifts, slept at the office some nights, tried therapy alone when she refused to leave the house. By summer, their house went on the market, sold in 9 days. Divorce papers filed quietly in August. Irreconcilable differences. No fault assigned. They split furniture, the dog, savings. Cassie kept the house proceeds. Her husband moved to Atlanta for a senior project manager job. 6 figures, fresh start, 330 miles north. First weekend in October, he moved. I learned through a mutual high school friend who saw the U-Haul. I texted once, * safe trip. Let me know when you get there. * delivered, never read. Thanksgiving passed quietly. Mom cooked for 2. Dad ate in front of the football game. They didn't invite me. Christmas lights glimmered on every house in their neighborhood except theirs. I drove by, slowed past dark windows, saw the realtor's lockbox still on the door even though the sale had closed months earlier. Cassie had moved into a 1-bedroom near the bay, blinds half shut. I mailed her banana bread and devotionals every few weeks. I knew because I ran into her at the post office. I kept working. Same reading room, same dictation booth, same cold coffee. I read ovarian masses, brain tumors, fractured spines, and every time the probe hit a pregnant uterus, I double-checked credentials on outside lab reports. Some habits become religion. One Thursday in January, I returned to my apartment to find a plain white envelope slid under my door. No return address. Inside was a single ultrasound photo, the real one from Spring Hill, the one showing the complex mass. On the back, in her husband's handwriting, * you were right. I'm sorry. * nothing else. No phone number, no explanation. I taped it to the fridge next to the takeout menus and left it there. 8 months after sentencing, I stood in my kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at that photo while the city slept outside. Here's what I know now: truth is a scalpel. It can save a life or cut out the heart of every relationship you thought permanent. Sometimes it does both at once. I saved Cassie's life. I exposed a predator who hurt dozens of women. I did the right thing every step, every sleepless night, every affidavit, and I still lost my only brother. Some victories leave you standing in an empty house holding pieces that will never fit back together. If you're watching and scared to speak up about a fake ultrasound, or a doctor dismissing concerns about anything wrong in your body or life, do it anyway. The fallout can be brutal. People you love might choose silence over you. They might never forgive you for refusing to look away. But someone else's future could depend on your voice today. I paid the highest price I could imagine for doing the right thing. I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because some truths are bigger than family. They have to be. Weeks turned into months. I settled into a rhythm of work and solitude, the apartment dim except for the glow of 3 monitors. Every case that came across my desk reminded me of what could have happened if I hadn't noticed the inconsistencies in that 4D print. Every patient became a little more personal, every scan a test of vigilance. Some habits, once routine, had transformed into a mission. I didn't hear from my family. Their silence was deafening, but I accepted it as the cost of doing what was right. My weekends were spent in research, connecting with women who had suffered similar deception from Keepsake Studios. I built a network, a confidential support group for women navigating false ultrasounds and misdiagnoses. Their gratitude was quiet, often expressed in messages that said little but meant everything. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't, read one. You saved me before it was too late, said another. Those words, small as they were, became my lifeline. The courthouse experience remained vivid in my memory. Melanie Parsons serving time, the gavel echoing in a courtroom. Packed with plaintiffs, the validation of truth in the form of restitution, all of it was monumental. Yet, standing alone in my apartment, the victory felt hollow. Family dinners passed without mention, holidays went unshared. The world outside seemed to continue normally, but I was marked by the events I had lived through. I reminded myself that justice didn't always heal personal fractures. Cassie slowly recovered, regaining her health and strength. Her husband's new life in Atlanta created distance, physical and emotional, but she found small joys in her one-bedroom near the bay. The gifts I sent arrived quietly, acknowledged with brief texts or small nods in passing, enough to remind me she was safe and cared for, without forcing me into the family dynamic that had become unbearable. I watched from afar, feeling a mix of relief and sorrow, knowing that the protective role I had assumed had cost me the closeness I once had. I continued my work at the hospital, each day a reaffirmation of why I had chosen this path. Reading scans wasn't just a job, it had become a responsibility. If I could detect a false 4D image, I could detect subtle signs in patients that others might overlook. Lives depended on attention to detail, and I had learned the hard way that overlooking even the smallest anomaly could be devastating. My work became both my shield and my solace, a place where competence met compassion. Late nights often found me sitting by the bay, staring at the port lights, reflecting on everything that had happened. The city slept, oblivious to the battles fought in quiet offices, in sterile hospital rooms, in courtrooms, and within the walls of broken families. I realized that truth, though sharp and sometimes isolating, was indispensable. It saved lives, even when it destroyed relationships, and I had chosen to wield it responsibly. Some days, I allowed myself to feel the loneliness fully. Others, I focused on the victories, the lives saved, the injustices corrected, the women protected from harm. Over time, those small successes became more tangible than the familial love I had lost. I understood that doing the right thing rarely comes without cost, and sometimes, the cost is greater than anyone can anticipate. Yet, I could not regret a single decision. I pinned the ultrasound photo on my refrigerator, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. The image symbolized the responsibility I had embraced, the consequences I had faced, and the lives I had protected. Each time I looked at it, I remembered the weight of vigilance, the burden of truth, and the courage it required to act when others turned away. In the end, I had no grand reconciliation with my family, no acknowledgement from those I once counted on. The holiday cards remained absent, the texts remained unread, the closeness we had shared now a memory. Yet, I had done what mattered most. I had saved a life. I had exposed wrongdoing. I had honored my profession and my principles, even at personal cost. Truth, I learned, does not always reward the bearer with comfort or affection. Sometimes it leaves you standing in an empty room, but with the knowledge that your actions mattered. That knowledge became my anchor, and in its own quiet way, it was enough. If you find yourself facing a situation where the truth could hurt relationships, where speaking up could isolate you from the people you love, remember this: courage is not always recognized or celebrated. Sometimes, it is a silent act, a decision made in solitude, with consequences that echo in ways you cannot control. Yet, without it, lives may be lost, harm may go unchecked, and injustice will thrive. I paid the highest personal price I could imagine for following my conscience, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. Because some truths are bigger than family, bigger than comfort, bigger than anything but the lives they protect.